Before we can reliably measure the physical universe, we have to measure the instrument doing the observing. John Locke recognized that any attempt to analyze existence without first mapping the exact boundaries of human cognition would end in speculation and error. To draw that map, Locke had to confront the dominant 17th-century rationalist and nativist hypothesis. Nativism is the philosophical doctrine that God pre-installs foundational logic and moral axioms into the human soul before birth. Under this model, human beings arrive equipped with an inherent, divine operating system. In 1689, Locke published an essay concerning human understanding. The text was engineered specifically to dismantle the assumption of pre-installed cognitive hardware. Locke targets the supposed universality of innate ideas. He points out that if propositions like "what is" were universally stamped upon the soul, children and the severely intellectually disabled would possess and articulate them. Observation proves they do not. An idea cannot be imprinted upon a mind that remains completely unaware of it. Defenders of nativism argued for a dispositional account, suggesting that innate ideas lie dormant until external circumstances trigger them. Locke dismantles this logic. If a concept requires an external event to be realized in the mind, it is by definition acquired from the outside, not innate. Having systematically stripped away the possibility of both speculative and practical innate principles, Locke arrives at his baseline. At the moment of birth, the human intellect is a perfectly unwritten void, a tabula rasa, or blank slate. If the mind arrives entirely empty, every piece of data it eventually holds must be imported. Locke posits a strict empirical axiom. Data enters the void through only two restrictive channels. The first channel is sensation. This is the outward-facing mechanism of the biological senses, collecting raw physical data from external objects upon contact. The second channel is reflection. This is an internal-facing mechanism. It operates when the mind observes its own internal processes at work, gathering data from acts of doubting, believing, willing, or remembering. Through sensation and reflection, the mind receives what Locke calls simple ideas. These are the irreducible atomic units of human thought: a specific shade of white, the precise sting of cold, or the immediate sensation of hunger. In this initial phase, the mind is entirely passive. It acts solely as a receptor. It lacks the capacity to invent a new simple idea out of nothing, and it is equally incapable of destroying one it has already received. Therefore, every complex political theory, every hallucination, and every abstract mathematical proof is ultimately reducible to these atomic inputs. There is no hidden knowledge buried in the machine. There is only the data we gather from experience. Once the mind has been stocked with a sufficient inventory of simple ideas, its role shifts. It ceases to be a passive receptor and activates as a computational engine. The intellect's primary active power is the ability to compound and combine isolated simple ideas into complex ideas. Locke categorizes these complex ideas into three types. First are substances. These are combinations of simple ideas we conceive as independent, self-sustaining existences, like an oak tree, a horse, or a desk. Second are modes. These are dependent constructs that cannot exist independently. The concept of the number 7, the idea of beauty, or the act of theft are all modes. They require a substance to attach to. Third are relations. These arise when the active mind brings two distinct ideas together and compares them, creating concepts like causality, identity, or sovereignty. The mind possesses a second active power, abstraction. By stripping away specific circumstances of time and place from a particular idea, the mind creates general, universal concepts. This is how the observation of 10 individual horses yields the general concept of horse. Yet this compounding process runs into a hard philosophical wall. We observe certain simple ideas consistently appearing together in clumps: shape, color, weight. Logic dictates there must be a substratum supporting them. A substratum is a theoretical underlying substance that holds the observable properties of an object together, even though it cannot be perceived itself. Locke admits we have zero empirical access to this underlying substance. Our cognition is entirely reliant on grouping the observable properties we can experience, tethering them to a conceptual center we cannot comprehend. The human mind is a sophisticated combinatorial engine capable of generating infinite conceptual complexity. But it remains strictly quarantined within the alphabet of its initial sensory inputs. To understand exactly how the mind interacts with the physical world, Locke aligns his epistemology with the cutting-edge physics of his era. To explain this, he adopts the corpuscular philosophy. The corpuscular philosophy is a physical theory that explains all natural phenomena through the motion, collision, and impact of microscopic, indivisible particles of matter. The universe, under this model, is purely mechanical. To explain how these invisible atoms generate the subjective ideas in our minds, Locke divides the properties of physical objects into two strict categories. The first category is primary qualities. These are objective, mind-independent mathematical features. They exist in the physical object regardless of whether anyone is there to perceive them. The primary qualities are limited to solidity, extension, figure, and mobility. For primary qualities, Locke enforces a strict rule of resemblance. The mental idea you have of an object's shape or motion accurately mirrors the physical, atomic reality of that object in the void. The second category is secondary qualities. These are not inherent features of the object at all. They are entirely mind-dependent relational powers. Secondary qualities encompass our experiences of color, taste, sound, and heat. These qualities are merely the byproduct of invisible corpuscles, possessing only size, shape, and motion, colliding with the highly specific biological apparatus of human sense organs. When you perceive the redness of an apple or the heat of a fire, you are experiencing a subjective hallucination. The physical object contains only moving atoms. Your biology translates that mechanical impact into an experience of temperature or hue. The implications of this model are severe. Stripped of our specific biological interface, the physical universe is entirely cold, silent, and composed solely of colorless geometry. Humanity is permanently trapped behind a representational interface. We do not and cannot experience the universe as it exists mechanically. We experience it only as it acts upon our specific biology. This disconnect forces us to confront how we categorize reality. Locke defines the real essence of an object as its hidden atomic constitution, the precise arrangement of corpuscles that mechanically gives rise to all its observable properties. Because our perception ends at the macroscopic level, we lack access to these real essences. The internal gears of reality remain hidden behind the casing. To function, the mind uses a cognitive workaround Locke calls nominal essence. A nominal essence is simply the collection of observable ideas, the color, weight, and shape that an object produces in us, which we bundle together under a single name. Human language, scientific taxonomy, and classification systems are constructed entirely around these nominal essences. We sort things into categories, like gold or horse, based on the sensory data we observe, not on the underlying atomic reality we cannot see. Human knowledge is therefore fundamentally conventional. We project our human-made boundaries onto a dark and totally unknowable physical reality, mapping the limitations of our own minds rather than the architecture of the universe. Locke's project culminates in a highly austere definition of knowledge. Knowledge, he concludes, is nothing more than the perception of the agreement or disagreement of our own ideas. We operate permanently behind the veil of perception. The veil of perception is the philosophical concept that our minds are separated from the external world by the very ideas we use to perceive it, preventing direct access to physical reality. We compare our mental representations to each other. We never compare them directly to the objects themselves. Our realm of absolute, demonstrable certainty is remarkably narrow, surrounded by a vast, unknowable depth of physical metaphysics we are biologically blind to. Yet Locke argues this severe epistemic limitation is not a tragedy. Our senses were not designed to comprehend the absolute atomic truth of the cosmos. Our faculties are perfectly calibrated for practical survival, for moral reasoning, and for human flourishing. We can observe causal relationships, establish civil governments, and deduce the mathematical laws of navigation, even if the ultimate physical mechanics of gravity remain a mystery. The blank slate, once properly stocked by experience, provides exactly the tools required to chart our course through existence. By rigidly defining what the human mind cannot know, Locke secures the foundation for everything it can. Accepting the limits of our cognition is the first necessary step to intellectual freedom.